he's aware if the resolution makes reference to the Sustainable Development Goals.
Wala, no?
No, the resolution.
Not
which
the
supports-
resolution
which
itself,
supports,
Your
yeah.
Honor. Not the resolution itself.
Yeah, the resolution doesn't. No, it's 2 pages. It doesn't.
Yeah.
But would His Honor know whether the framework mentions it?
Not comprehensively, Your Honor, but I think it mentions incomes, things like that, which are touched upon in health. It mentions health, which I think are touched upon in some of the SDGs, Your Honor.
Yeah. Well, I'll as I manifested yesterday, the medium-term fiscal framework is 21 pages, and I did not have time to read it yet yesterday, and I started yesterday, and I have not completed it. But I can tell His Honor that on the very last page, the second to the last paragraph, it says, I'll read that whole paragraph. The upcoming 2023 to 2025 budget and appropriations will continue to prioritize health, education, disaster risk management, food and social security, digital economy, local government support, private sector participation, and growth-inducing expenditures such as crucial and shovel-ready infrastructure projects. All this will bring the economy closer to achieving the country's Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, such as those in the United Nations SDGs. So His Honor will already know that I am pleased to know that, as His Honor has said, no, that it may not have been defined, like SDG 1, SDG 2, but there is a clear mention of this, and then I would say highlighting those specific aspects, health, which is SDG 3, education, food, etc., etc. So I am happy to know that. I'll go to the crux of my concern, since there is already a recognition that a budget that is intended to be proposed will bring the economy closer to achieving the country's Sustainable Development Goals, then consider this a predecessor to what I expect the DBCC to assure us of in the coming budget hearings, Your Honor. Do we expect to see a prioritization then in the health, education, disaster risk, and so on and so forth budgets?
I would think so, Your Honor. I read somewhere that the health budget has been increased, or some aspects at least, but not on the whole. I think there was something about UP and PGH, which we increased
Yes.
successively under your leadership.
And which
yes.
every administration does not consider a recurring increase. And
Yes.
every DBCC hearing, I make the statement, and if I'm not mistaken, His Honor supports it, that for budgetary items that we clearly recognize are important for our country's growth and development, there should be a continuing allocation such that when one project ends, there's funding for the next project, and not that us here in Congress, we're grappling and rushing to at least salvage the little budget that we were able to insert in the previous Congress in the hope that they'll recognize it again, and we're always waiting. And the latest term is FLR. Every Congress is a different term of how those fundings are removed from the budget or not repeated.
I do agree. I wish that were the case, Your Honor. But unfortunately, it's more of the case that the DBM has this one fund concept where everything reverts to one fund, meaning it operates like a vacuum cleaner rather than a recurring obligation or appropriation. So if that project is completed, that fund will be vacuumed out of the budget and put in another agency's budget.
And
Your
I
Honor.
understand, Your Honor. His Honor is able to clearly explain what or how the administration does things, or how they approach these things. But my question to the gentleman is, would it not be a more would it not be a form of future-proofing our budget? And when I say future-proofing, I won't even argue anymore with the priority set here in the second to the last paragraph of page 21 of the medium-term fiscal framework. I already read the enumeration, health, education, so on and so forth. I won't even argue with those items mentioned. But wouldn't it be a form of future-proofing these budgets when if DBM can present to us a budget that a percentage of the budget maybe that they're willing to work with, so that they're always funding these particular items, Your Honor. What is His Honor's view on that? Does he think this, number one, does he agree with it? Number two, does he think it's even feasible? Because we always put on record percentages, like WHO says we're supposed to spend X% of our budget or our GDP on this.
I think we should, Your Honor. I agree with you. And perhaps we should do what we do with respect to infrastructure, Your Honor. Because in infrastructure, we set a goal, I think 2 administrations ago, that we should reach 5% of GDP with respect to infrastructure spending.
Yes, and
we reached it. And we reached it, Your
and that
Honor.
was the blueprint,
That
right?
was.
If I may put it that
So
way.
why don't we set a goal and say, in a few years, let's hit whatever percentage it is. For education, I think we used to spend in the 80s and 90s 2% of GDP, and at some point we hit somewhere near 4%, Your Honor.
We did. If His Honor will recall, during the budget, the budget debates on the floor, I think that the last budget, this budget, 2022 budget, which we held almost 10, 11 months ago, we precisely had this similar discussion on the floor, Your Honor, that what is it that we want to spend? How do we want to spend it? Because my difficulty, Your Honor, in defending the budget is I'm also surprised, and that shouldn't be the case, Your Honor. I've defended the budget of, let's say, education for 3 years and health for 2 years, and I'm still surprised with the cuts. I would like to believe that if DOH supports, if DOH did not, for example, if DOH did not get a budget for a particular health item, but Congress deemed it necessary to include it, then the second year, I assume, and it has happened, that it becomes institutionalized. But it has also happened that it's not. So, I guess what maybe consider this a proposal, Your Honor, that we can ask DBM and the whole economic team, to have more meetings with us so that we know the direction. Because when this representation defends the budget, I will defend it to my last dying breath. I really will, and His Honor knows that.
Yes, Your Honor.
And I will also take the cudgels for any increases that we are not able to make, that other colleagues are supporting, and I will try to explain why or why not. But when we're in the dark as to if I cannot bridge the gap in my head between what the general statements are and the details, and as they say, the devil is in the details, then it makes it very difficult for us, Your Honor, to do our job.
I agree, Your Honor. I agree.
So, I'm more familiar with Ambition 2040 because it's been around and it's a shorter document than the medium-term framework. It's fairly general. The visions are, let me put it on record. Matatag na pamilya, maginhawa at panatag. And then they go into details what that means. Matatag is the families together, and I would suppose this would include having jobs in the country so that hindi kailangan umalis sa mga nanay at tatay at magtrabaho sa ibang lugar. Time with friends, this goes directly into my earlier speech, my earlier sponsorship speech, that you have time to relax, mental health as opposed to being in traffic for 4 hours a day, work-life balance, goes same thing. Under maginhawa, free from hunger and poverty, That's actually SDG number 1, no poverty, and hunger is SDG 2. Security and home ownership, good transportation, and then under panatag naman, enough resources. So ito yung food security siguro, enough resources day to day, making a living wage, not just a minimum wage, living wage. So general naman to, Your Honor. And I'm happy enough with that, but this is the second Congress that we have a Committee on Sustainable Development, and it is my responsibility now that the concept, that everybody is more familiar with the concept, that we really are able to go into the nitty-gritty and make sure that we are on track with those targets. Would His Honor agree that during the budget deliberations, it would be fair to ask the DBM, and for that matter, I would start with the DBCC briefing and hearing, that they align their budget allocation to the Sustainable Development Goals?
I think it's not unreasonable, Mr. President, Your Honor, because we are a party to all these
Yes.
treaties and conventions. We are signatories to them. So we have committed to them, and I think the budget is also a very effective tool for achieving these goals.
Exactly.
These are the building blocks upon which we build in order to achieve a given goal, Your Honor.
Because would His Honor then be willing to further state or agree with this representation that failure to do so or do something like that, where you really are accountable to achieving particular goals, particular targets within every goal, may result in there being a big difference between general statements and actual delivery of these particular these deliverables in education and health, in disaster risk management, and so on?
Certainly,
and so
Your
forth.
Honor. And going back to your earlier query, everything begins with a plan. So we have to ask, perhaps, as you said, sit down with our economic managers and say, what is the plan? And because we've always been saying we should achieve 5% of GDP, infrastructure spending to GDP ratio. Why don't we set the same goals for our human development sector as we do for the physical development, Your Honor?
Thank you for that, Your Honor. We appreciate that because this is a new administration. There are new, this representation is cognizant that they have stated that they would be continuing many of the policies. In fact, if I look at the revenue generation policies that were stated, not just in the SONA, but later on statements coming from the Secretary of Finance, it's basically almost identical to the wish list that was handed to me
Yes.
as chairman of the Committee on Ways and Means. So we're very familiar with it, and if that's the direction, then it's nothing new to us. But what we would also like to add to the discussion is the fact that there are new persons involved. I don't really know how many of the department heads there have changed. We want to ensure that the Senate's appreciation for sustainable development programs and futures thinking is also recognized. In the previous Congress, we have actually been successful in providing very small budget but very meaningful budgets for the establishments of futures thinking offices in DepEd. NEDA now has a sustainable development. Is it an office? An office?
Yes.
Or it's-
They're
in
scattered.
any case,
They're scattered all over the bureaucracy, thanks to you, Your
They are, Your
Honor.
Honor. And then we've also put in budget for DAP to conduct trainings. As I have said on the floor before, you are welcome to send your staff there. My chief of staff has attended to DAP.
We do, diba? We send our
What do you call them? Courses on futures thinking. There are many available to all of us, to all government officials. So we've done that part, and it is our hope that the new administration will be open to and will react positively to using these tools so that we are aligned in our direction, Your Honor.
I agree. I hope they are too. And looking at some of the personalities, I can't say comprehensively that all will be on board, but I believe several will be on board, Your Honor, Mr. President. And to continue some of the good work you've started. And I note that Singapore has I'm not sure if it's an agency or a bureau, just dedicated to futures thinking. And they just look all over the world and see where trends are in fields as diverse as geography and film and all types of
Yes, Your Honor.
all types. It's just it's a freewheeling mandate or jurisdiction to sort of chart and make sure that Singapore is not left behind, basically.
And what's interesting is in the Global Health Conference I attended less than 2 weeks ago, the WHO representative to China focused on creativity in the approach to future-proofing healthcare in the world. He focused on using creativity, which Filipinos have an abundance of, no, in many different fields. I guess the last thing, which is still consistent with the work in this representations committee, is the concept of intergenerational fairness. Would His Honor also agree that it's a fair ask that when they defend the budget they're presenting to us, when they present it to us and they expect us to defend it or to at least accept most of it, to ask them to explain if what they are doing are also considers this concept of intergenerational fairness. And I'll always use examples that are current issues. I go back to SALT. When we decided that one of the reasons I was in the hearing of the Committee on Science and Technology, which my brother Alan was presiding over, and one of the topics was SALT. And our majority floor leader, who's not listening to me, had previously and I'm just kidding. I'm just teasing him, Your Honor.
He's listening. He has that
Teasing.
ability to talk and listen at the same
Yes,
time, Your
yes.
Honor.
No,
It's a superpower that very few of us have, Your
No,
Honor.
I'm just teasing him because it is his advocacy on asin. And we were saying,
Yes, he's been very vocal.
He's
a salty guy, Your Honor.
Asin nga lang, hindi pa natin maayos, di ba? So the remarks I gave in that committee were memories of my childhood. I lived in BF Home, so ang dinadaanan is Sukat, Parañaque, and salt beds all over. And slowly I really saw it with my own eyes, the same way that those of you who've traversed BGC the fort before it became BGC knows that talahib karamihan yon, no, and now it's all buildings. At that time, salt beds yon. And I asked the resource persons we had if my understanding is correct that one of the big reasons, aside from urbanization, but another major reason why we slowly lost our edge in salt production is because we passed a law that required that we had iodized salt, and because we also did not move forward with processing, you know, we were just into raw products, then we didn't jump on that because we could have processed our own and make our salt iodized. So instead, those salt beds just slowly disappeared, and no one had the foresight. I'm sure there would have been. I'm sure there would have been academe professors, maybe a few people in whatever, in maybe DA, I don't know. But sadly, there was no collective decision to think forward that salt, like many other agricultural products, are needed. We need food security with these items, and we let go of it. So anyway,
Mr. President, may I just make a comment?
As
Because
in, you can.
I was called a salty guy. I mean,
I withdraw the comment, Your Honor.
Who wouldn't be feeling salty about this situation when our country is importing
Exactly,
93% of our salt requirements? We have about more than 36,000 kilometers of coastline, Mr. President, and yet we are importing 93%.
I support the
of
majority leader
our-
100% in his advocacy because
I just want to put
Your
that on
Honor.
record because it's really unacceptable. I was just talking to some friends of ours from Pangasinan. Pangasinan, by the way, is a boat-rich province. Pangasinan. So, Pangasinan word came from Pangasinan.
Wow.
Bolinao, for instance, is a known town that produces salt. But, Mr. President, ang dami na hong kumpanya na nagsara. And Senator Amy Marcos would also attest in Ilocos Norte, they're having problems. So, in 1990s, we were only importing 15% of salt, Mr. President. Now it's 93%. So, I just want to put that on record, Mr. President, that yes, I feel salty about this situation. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, dear colleagues.
But usually he's a sweet guy, like yourself, Mr. President.
Yes, I was about to
Yes.
say I'd rather be a sweet
Yeah.
guy.
Most of the time he's sweet.
Like me.
Mr. President, like you.
But gentlemen, the best combination is salty and sweet.
That's true. That's a dangerous combination.
Salted
Your Honor.
caramel.
Anyway, Your Honors, I use that example to illustrate my point. Would the gentleman agree that we can ask them to make targets? So what can we achieve in this medium-term plan?
Yeah.
Can we reduce that 93% importation to 25%, 5%, or I don't know.
I think what you're alluding to is a shared advocacy of ours, Your Honor. In fact, if you remember when you were sponsoring the CREATE law, we worked together to craft language to incentivize people who would add value to our processes. You mentioned about the processing of salt. We were not
Yes.
strategic in our thinking when we could
Yes.
have capitalized on a market opportunity. So we were remiss in that sense. But hopefully, the market will work its magic when we have incentives in play that will encourage. But sometimes the market does not work its magic. So that's when the government has to
Step
be
in.
more proactive and kind of chart a direction. That's why when I look at Singapore, theirs is not a purely market-based development. Now that I look at Indonesia and Vietnam, theirs is not a purely market-based development. And the very top echelons of leadership are taking a very active hand in attracting investments in particular industries.
Exactly, Your
Honor.
Honor.
Like Indonesia with its mining industry.
Exactly, Your
They
Honor.
prohibited the export of raw minerals, and
Exactly.
then that forced the industry to recalibrate and to refocus their energies towards processing, Your Honor. Something like that, I think, is what the distinguished lady is alluding to. Not necessarily that industry, but the thought process behind
Exactly.
it. To
Exactly.
to have more inputs, to have more of the process, the economic value chain in the country, so as to achieve more profits and higher incomes for our countrymen. I think we share that advocacy. I have my Tatak Pinoy advocacy, and it's very much something along those lines, along with what Majority Leader is fighting for the salt industry. It's jobs, it's higher incomes, it's also rural development, reverse migration, among others.
So we agree on this in principle, but on this note, do I understand, do I take it as a yes that His Honor would support my call to, and we can help define what are those industries that we expect clear targets? Because I think that's the only way, because we defend the budget and say, oh, so will you improve? Yes, we will improve. Will you put in more funds? Yes, we will put in more funds. I mean, in principle, we all agree. No one disagrees. But without any clear targets that we can hold them accountable to after 1 year, what happened after 2 years?
Certainly on the government side, Your Honor. Like for what we can hold them accountable for what the government will do to spend, or what they will spend to incentivize people to, in terms of what economists call public goods, meaning infrastructure,
Yes.
goods that can be made to achieve higher values.
Yes.
Definitely we can hold them accountable for that. But the difficulty is that this advocacy of ours requires the private sector to sign on.
It does, it
Diba?
does.
For us to, it's not the government who will create these jobs. So our big industries, our medium-sized industries should also sign on to the plan. And there must be credibility on the part of the government. So the private sector will kind of say, okay, I like this plan. I'm willing to spend and put up a factory here if you tell me that you're going to attract the guys who make the spare parts or the guys who make the inputs. Then if there's a plan, I like it, I'll invest. But so it's difficult to hold the government accountable for something that the private sector is supposed to do. But definitely the government should do what it's supposed to do, which is incentivize the private sector, Your Honor. So I agree with you there.
But I guess what His Honor is saying, and what I'm willing to accept, is that they can only do so much. Government can only do so much. So what we can hold them accountable for, in addition to public goods, is to see how effective those programs are. and for them to really tell us what do they hope to achieve with this program, so that again it's still measurable.
100%, Your
If
Honor,
they say that
100%,
with this
yeah.
program I'm supposed to sign up 100 medium-sized companies, then we see that, oh, did you sign up those 100? You weren't able to sell it. Why not? Were you not able to communicate it well? The market is just so bad that they won't. So that we can also
For sure.
do
I
our
agree with
part.
you 100% on that
Okay.
one, Your Honor.
Anyway, the last example I will and I will end here without even going into any further details is water. We every now and every Congress there'll be one or two speeches about water, but I have yet to hear from a administration ever since I became a senator on a clear plan on how we will ensure availability of water, security of water in the years to come. Again, intergenerational fairness, Your Honor. I won't go into the details. I'm just
yes,
leaving.
I think we do need a plan. I think I've heard the President mention that there are so many agencies scattered all over which deal with water policy, and
Yes.
sometimes they're not always on the same page. So I'm awaiting, I'm sure just as you are, in which direction we're going to move, if it's a department or if it's...
Actually, Your Honor, we spoke to, was it yesterday that Secretary Yulo
Yes,
Lizaga
yes, it was yesterday,
was
Your Honor.
here? We actually had a short chat on that.
Very nice, thank you.
Apparently, she is putting together, she will report to the President on all these various, as you said, agencies and offices that are handling waters, so that we know where we are and we can move forward on that. With that, Your Honor, I have many more questions, but I will not go into them anymore. I think I've made my point clear, and I am satisfied that His Honor agrees with me, and I will hope that in the coming budget deliberations, His Honor will support me, because our only objective really here is to ensure that the policy stated in all these documents, from the resolution to the framework to Ambition 2040, are not just vague.
Not just platitudes, Your Honor.
Exactly, Your Honor. So with that, thank you to the gentleman from
Most
Aurora.
welcome, Your Honor, Mr. President, and I assure the Senior Vice Chair of our committee of my highest respect, and I will work hard to achieve our common vision and the beautiful ideas you enunciated. Please believe me when I say that, in all sincerity, I will work very hard to, we owe it to our people, and as their people's representatives, to achieve, to do some of these things that we promised them. So thank you very much, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, my dear colleague from Taguig, Pateros.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, at this juncture, I move that we recognize our next interpellator, and probably the last, Mr. President, our distinguished minority leader,